In my experience, one of the most frequent ways an ALJ errs is by failing to properly evaluate the medical opinion evidence. So under the rules and regulations, the ALJ must evaluate all medical evidence. You'd be surprised how often they miss one. So they'll evaluate a number of opinions, but they'll miss one opinion. That's error. They have to evaluate every opinion. And when they're evaluating the opinions, they have to evaluate the persuasiveness of the opinions. They have to assign a persuasiveness value to it, so to speak. So it's somewhat persuasive, it's highly persuasive, it's not persuasive at all. But the judges have to evaluate and assign some persuasiveness value to it. And sometimes they'll err by not doing that. When they are doing that, the rules and regulations say that there's two factors that they must evaluate. It's the most important two factors that they must evaluate, and that's supportability and consistency. And they have to provide an explanation as to why the medical opinion is supported by and consistent with the records and the medical evidence and the evidence as a whole. And sometimes they'll err, the ALJs will err and create reversible error by failing to properly do that. Sometimes it's also the case that when they do evaluate supportability and consistency, they still do it in a way that creates an error because they're not doing it fully. They do it in part. It's a partial evaluation. So as an example, I've seen numerous opinions that we've dealt with where there will be an analysis on certain limitations that were opined by the doctor. Let's say limitations in sitting and standing and walking. And the judge will find that the opinion is persuasive and specifically explain that those limitations are consistent with and supported by the record, but will miss other limitations, such as handling and fingering or any number of other limitations. And by failing to evaluate all of the limitations or omitting them, it leaves this inference that the judge only evaluated the supportability and consistency of some limitations, but ignored the others. And when evaluating the decisions and determining how to appeal to appeals counsel or whether to appeal to federal court, it's not enough to look and see that the judge said, I've evaluated supportability and consistency. First of all, a boilerplate statement without explanation in most circuits is not enough. But you also have to look and dive deeper than that. Sometimes the ALJs will only evaluate supportability and consistency with respect to some limitations and leave open a complete question as to whether or not and how, whether or not they evaluated other limitations or how they evaluated them. And that could create its own error, failing to fully evaluate the opinion evidence. ALJs err a lot when it comes to opinion evidence, so you have to be very careful and you have to really dive deep in looking at how the opinion evidence was evaluated.